Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this week we have Exo-Calibre. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer VanPixel, Exo-Calibre released in June of 2025 for the PC, the PlayStation 4 and 5, the Xbox, and the Nintendo Switch, which is the version we're looking at today. This title is a cute vertical scrolling shoot 'em up from the same developer as Takotan, so if you enjoyed that title, this one is an easy recommend. I've had a great time with this title, and not only that, I also consider it a great value, so it really is an easy one to recommend. With all that said, let's dive into the game and check it out. So finding ourselves at the main menu, so we're going to be looking under the play menu. Once you select that, we're taken to our mode select. Initially you'll have story and arcade available, clear those, and then you've got boss rush, unlock boss rush, and then we have time rush, which is the same as story or arcade, but it goes and has you play against the clock. It's a lot of fun, though a bit challenging. Once you select your mode, and we'll be playing story to check out the game today, you're taken to your pilot select. Initially you have 3 pilots available, but throughout the course of your game you will be able to unlock 3 additional characters, including Takotan, who does make an appearance in this title. I highly encourage you to take the time to unlock Takotan, as he's a lot of fun to play. We'll try a couple different pilots so you can see some different gameplay throughout the course of this video. Selecting your pilot, you're taken to this screen here, which actually acts as a really good tutorial. So you can see the shot, you can check out your melee attack, there's also a boost, so all your commands are on there on the right, and then in order to start the game, you just advance to the top of the screen. This is a vertical scrolling shoot 'em up, however, it does not have tate, so keep that in mind. In story and arcade, we will have the story, so for our purposes, we'll have to skip past that today, but that's not too bad. So each character has their own unique shot, and one of the things that's really neat about this game is you have the ability to upgrade yourself between levels. So throughout the course of our run, we're collecting bolts from enemies that will randomly drop, and those bolts are our currency in the shop that comes between the stages. In addition to collecting them, if you continue to shoot a bolt, it'll ultimately burst into kind of this cloud of scrap, so instead of worth 1 at that point, it's worth 2. However, one thing to keep in mind, if you're playing the game in that time rush mode I was talking about, you'll get clocks which will extend your time. But if you shoot the clock too much, those clocks just explode and you'll no longer be able to get time from those ones. So in addition to our shot, which is your main form of attack, we also have the melee. One thing that's neat about the melee in this particular title is that it actually acts as your invulnerable dodge. So you can use it to damage enemies, you can use it to dodge through bullets, and you'll actually hit the bullets that you're dodging through back at the enemies. Most of the time it's not enough to go and deal enough damage to take out most enemies unless you hit a really big cloud of bullets, but that's something to keep in mind. The main point is that the dodge will allow you to survive in situations where you'll otherwise lose a life. So one thing to note, when you're playing the game in some modes, if you happen to lose a life, basically get a game over, then you'll set back to a continue if you're playing in story, for example. However, if you're playing in other modes like arcade, boss rush, or the time rush, if you happen to get a game over, or rather if you run out of HP, which we can see there in the bottom left, or rather right of the screen, then you'll actually continue right where you left off. So it just depends on which mode you're playing in. So one thing to keep in mind when you are playing story, you'll want to advance to the various checkpoints, and you can go and see where those are at pretty easily because, well, there is the story involved, and that's where we'll ultimately set through our checkpoints. So if we were to go and lose a life, we want to get past this section here, as that's where our next checkpoint is. So the last thing I haven't talked about is the boost. So if you activate the boost, you are invulnerable while using that, but one of the things that's really neat about the boost is it actually is advancing the speed of the stage itself. So one thing that I can say about Exo-Calibre is the stages are maybe a little on the long side, so having that boost be able to accelerate through and shorten up the stages is actually quite nice. So now we find ourselves facing our first boss, the Hydra. A lot of the boss fights in this game are actually a lot of fun to go through. So the trick here with this boss is that as we defeat the heads, we continually get more and more heads for this particular boss, all the way up to 5. And as the fight goes on, it's harder and harder to take out the heads fast enough where the enemy doesn't attack. So here now we've got 4 heads, and they'll have different types of attacks. Like we can see the one with the laser, which we can use the melee to dodge through. Unfortunately, where the enemies are positioned like that, we'll have to wait for a sec. As you can see here, this is actually a decent example of where we can dodge through the bullets, sending them back at the enemy. So with the Hydra, we ultimately end up with these 5 heads, and this will be the final form of the boss. So just as long as we don't lose a life here, we'll be able to finish this fight and move on to the next stage. So when you clear a boss fight, you get scrap equal to 10 scrap total, so that's added to whatever scrap you collected from the stage. Once the stage is complete, we get some bonuses for how much health and how many lives we have left. That score is added to our total score, and then from there, we're taken to the shop. In the shop, you have the ability to upgrade your weapon, your HP, so the total number of hits you can take, speed, and add additional lives as well. And so adding additional lives is usually one of the things that I save for the end once you've upgraded everything else. So for our purposes, I'm going to upgrade my weapon twice and the HP once. Once you're complete shopping, then you can exit the shop and you're taken to the next stage. So now you can see we actually have a significantly more powerful shot, and it's the enemies that we're facing right now are kind of trivial. Throughout the course of the run, things will get significantly more challenging, as even by the end you're dealing with enemies that will send revenge bullets your way when you destroy them. There's just a lot more enemies on the screen, so things get almost to the level of bullet hell in terms of difficulty and how much is on the screen, depending on which character you take. Some of the characters are better at crowd control than others. Now, having taken a second to go and swap to a different pilot, we can see here that this pilot is equipped with a shotgun that's really powerful. However, it's a little more on the short range side. Real quick, just something to go and note, this is one section of the game that I don't necessarily enjoy. There's a couple areas where you have those turrets which are on the side of the screen, and unfortunately you can't actually do anything to destroy those turrets. You just have to dodge around and use your melee strike to get past the fire from those turrets, or you can just use your boost and just accelerate past the whole section. That might actually be the easier way to go and do it. It's just something to keep in mind. And really, there's what we have as far as the gameplay and everything for Exo-Calibre. As far as the game's concerned, I really appreciate all the various game modes that are there, and it's a really great vertical scrolling shoot 'em up that starts off relatively easily, and towards the end that does go and ramp up in difficulty. The story mode is very accessible, but if you're looking for a challenge, the arcade mode is definitely where it's at. The extra modes as well can also provide a good amount of challenge there also. So it's definitely a solid recommend from the chef. As far as the minus flavors are concerned, so there's just that issue with some of those turrets that I've mentioned, and another thing that I was saying earlier, the stages do feel just a little on the long side, but where you have that boost ability to be able to skip past that, it's not ultimately that big of a deal. But as often as you're going to be playing through the game, potentially with other characters, it's would be nice if things were just a little more concise. But on the plus flavors concerned, I definitely, as I was saying, feel like the game has some great gameplay for a vertical scroller, so it's a lot of fun that way. The fact that you have unlocks in the modes and especially the additional characters is a lot of fun, and ultimately it also has a great price point. So at the end of the day, Exo-Calibre is a solid recommend from the chef. Definitely check this one out. And with that, we find ourselves at the end of this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, we want to thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful week yourself, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.